Today's talk is going to be very different than any of the other self-improvement, self-help kind of talks that I've shared with you. Today is about the current state of the world and how we've got to this point and where we're going to go into the future. Predictions for the future. And we're going to look into the past to figure out how exactly we got here. Because if we don't know how we got here, we cannot chart a proper course forward. Right. So at least on an individual level. Now, and what we're going to go over is the last 120 years and how so much has transpired in that time that's put us at this point of chaos where we do not know where we're going. We are the gods of the earth, the gods of the world, human, man. We have conquered. We are here. We have global control over everything, nature and ourselves. But where do we go from here? What is next for the human race? Will there be a human race? What will this look like into the future? What's coming and how can we prepare for that? How can we live our time in the now and find the most meaning and depth and fulfillment and passion and happiness, freedom and money that we can, right? Because it's a very difficult and very confusing world that we're living in. It is the easiest time to ever be alive as a human being in a first world nation. Most nations across the globe, by the way, but it doesn't mean it doesn't come with serious downsides, serious distractions that keep ourselves from ourselves and steal what it means to be a human right out from under us with all of the productivity and technology and advances that we've achieved in this last 120 year period. So let's start with number one and stay with me on this one because we need to learn from this. I might state this and you might immediately have an aversion, want to cut off the podcast, move to a different video that I have or elsewhere. But we have lost God. What does this mean exactly? So for eons, thousands of years, humanity has been bonded together, getting a phone call, sorry. Humanity has been bonded together in communities, in groups, within a church. We would, generally speaking, meet there once a week. We would have a community. And not only that, we would have a deep sense of meaning and purpose of a higher power, something to follow, something to live for, something that binds us together as brothers and sisters in Christ or in Allah or in whatever higher power was within our culture, right? So what did that mean? It means our baseline level of morality wasn't just to not hurt people and treat humans better. The baseline level of morality in each human soul would have been fundamental in the sense that your entire afterlife, your eternal life, is dictated by what you do here on earth and what you believe and how you act. Because what you believe dictates how you act. Generally speaking, everyone makes mistakes. No one is perfect. Everyone is hypocrites to some degree or another, right? But losing God, losing religion, science entering the fold, that gives us that certainty that humans crave so much, or doesn't necessarily give us a lot of certainty, but it gives us enough to lean away from God and put that power in ourselves. Man is God. I am God. This is what's occurred. And when you are God, what does that look like? How does that unfold in your day-to-day life? It's created human beings into being much more self-centered and narcissistic in nature, right? Because if you don't have a higher power above you that you have to humble yourself before and respect and follow and believe in and read about and listen to and do what he tells you to do in the written text that you would study if you could read, right? Or that you would learn from and be able to tell stories about because you hear the priest or the pastor talk about it each Sunday or Saturday or whatever day of the week it would have been for you in your town, your city, your tribe, right? Now, not necessarily tribe. I'm not going that far back in history, but let's say the last 1,000 years. Now, because also the last 1,000 years, we've found ourselves building massive and relatively peaceful civilizations. And all of this is radically transpired in the last 200 years from the birth of the United States, right? In Europe, the church held the power, the church and state. The Pope was like a god, the king. He was the one that had the ultimate status, the ultimate political power. He holds the nations by their spirituality. And Martin Luther and the Protestant movement was able to break away from this dictatorship, really, this authoritarian regime that was taxing all of Europe, right? Taxing them mentally, practically, financially, right? And restricting civilization and keeping everybody down. And also, of course, underneath the monarchies as well, underneath the king and queen. There was no such thing as freedom of speech. If you spoke out against the king, he would cut out your tongue and burn your children alive in front of you. Your wife would be raped by guards. This is how all of human history has been in most larger nations, right? Thousands of years is what we're talking about here. Now, so Martin Luther, the Protestant movement, we had these Puritans, these Protestants that broke away from the Catholic Church and began reading the Bible on their own and for themselves so they could interpret it instead of relying on the priests to interpret the Bible in their own way, to control and manipulate and have power over the population and to retain that bureaucracy, that authoritarian regime for man's power and glory. So you had this movement that took the Bible for what it was and read the New Testament for what it actually is. And they took these ideas into the New World, into America, and they seceded from Europe, from England, right? And they founded the original colonies, wrote the Declaration of Independence. Following that came the Constitution and XYZ, and built the fabric of our free nation, where people had an individual right to vote, an individual voice, when for all of human history, you had no voice in the large nations, that is, that controlled most of the world, at minimum the last 2,000 years, right? So now individuals had the power. Individuals had their own sovereignty, their own control, and their own free will. Christianity freed the world, freed mankind, freed the slaves. All of this happened over a period of time through the tenets of God and Christianity, right? So understanding that and that value that has is good. I think people should know this, regardless of what they believe. This alone can inspire some level of gratitude for the United States itself and where we live today compared to any other time in history. Go to China right now. It's a communist regime. Good luck with free speech. You can't even log on to Facebook. Like, look at North Korea. Look at these other worlds, right? Now, and since we flourished so much through capitalism, through that free market, laissez-faire economics, XYZ, blah, blah, insert terms I don't really know exactly because I'm not an expert on all things economic policy related and historically related, but I know the basics got us here and got us to this successful and rich and prosperous nation that we are, where everyone, including most of the homeless, have a cell phone, where almost no one starves. We have more overweight. We have an overweight problem than a malnourished problem. This is crazy. We have the craziest, most amazing world that we've ever built, but we're very unhappy. Why? We're going to get into that today, of course, because losing God, right, after it founded this nation, after it built ourselves into this efficient and organized and purpose-focused, freedom-focused nation of people fighting as individuals collectively to build a great nation together, to break away from England and to rise to our own power in the world, to make ourselves a safe and prosperous nation. And as capitalism took off here, what happened to other nations in the world? One by one, they lean into the same direction because they saw the success and the flag of America flying. We've been a beacon of hope and optimism for the entire globe, even to this day. South African countries, left and right, are adopting capitalism, and they're rising out of poverty. Africa as a whole is rising out of poverty faster than any of the economists and the United Nations predicted. like times 2. It's unbelievable. Look at the Eastern European countries, which have been plagued with war and dictatorships and awful authoritarian regimes and controlling regimes for so long, communist countries left and right. And as each one adopts capitalism or some level of a republic, right, kind of a pseudo-capitalism things going on, each country's different. Look at what they've turned into. Look at the country of Croatia and how it's been able to rise into what it is now. So, and all of this started with a faith in God and a belief in man, in that man has a choice. Man is made in the image of God to serve God, right? These ideals have left the nation. So what has it left us with now? Where are we at now? Just when it comes to losing God, essentially. We have lost that meaning, that faith, that higher purpose that bonds humanity together for a fight for heaven and against hell, for life and freedom and against tyranny and death, right? And that does not mean this is perfect. That does not mean that every system that's ever been created, any company, any business, any family is going to have levels of corruption in and among them, inside them. It's just that man is flawed. That's man's nature. But you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? So losing God, losing meaning, faith, higher purpose, and that collective bond among each other. We've lost this depth, this drive for self-seeking, nihilistic, meaningless behaviors and pleasure-seeking habits, essentially. Because if God isn't real, then why care what you do exactly? As long as you just don't go to jail, most people have a level of empathy and respect for other human beings, so they don't want to hurt people directly. So they just live how they want, do what they want. You only live once, so fuck it. Do anything, have anything, get anything that you want. Do anything you desire. Follow your heart, right? Not that follow your heart's a bad thing, but most people mistake following their heart for following seductive, destructive, pleasure-seeking behaviors of your body. Not your heart, not your soul. You're not following that side of you. That side's usually packed in tight and protected from most people's own awareness. They're allowing their body and their pleasure-seeking limbic system to drive them in their daily behavior. So what did this introduce? What's happened over the last 120 years here? What switched from the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, in the 60s, the sexual and drug-infused revolution? What happened? We have drugs, sex, music, debauchery, all tilting us into a direction of just seek pleasure, avoid pain, go towards whatever feels good in the moment, man. And this confuses ourselves as individuals and as a culture because you get lost in that chaos. What is a gypsy? What is the metaphorical seductress, that chaotic gypsy, like I said, right? That could serve it as an example of this movement, of the revolution. And what came with some of this? Peace and love and do what you want. Let's have a good time. No more war, rock and roll, rap music, drug, sex, debauchery, pleasure-seeking habits that renders us in this kind of soup and chaos. Because when you're doing anything that you want, there's no direction. There's no purpose. There's no point to drive towards. You're just having fun on a moment-by-moment basis. And that leaves a human being feeling more meaningless and nihilistic and left more depressed because men specifically, both men and women, but men more than anyone else, require a driver, require a target, a purpose, something to fight for that's noble in nature, to ignite their soul and spirit and their body to charge after something and to develop themselves into something. So what's occurred over this last 60, 70-year period? Each generation, one after the other, has slowly degenerated more and more and more. And you might think that this is just a trend in history, but it's not. This is new. This is new in our culture, in the United States. This is how nations fall apart. This is how Rome fell apart. And it leaves us all confused, even on a fundamental level. LGBTQSI, plus, S2, whatever the fuck, alphabet people. We don't understand. Now I have empathy and understanding for how bad you can be confused sexually and how confusing your identity can be. I'm an extremely open individual, extremely creative. I was very fluid, you could say, going through middle school and high school, and everybody knew it. People were confused with me. I show up wearing deep V-necks and big scarves to school sophomore year. They're looking at me like, what the fuck, dude? You were dressed in like a polo and flat shorts and Sperry's 2 weeks ago. What the hell? What is with these tight jeans and crazy graphic tees and fucking scarves? Why do you have earrings at 18 years old all of a sudden? What the fuck are you doing? Right? So I have an understanding and an empathy for people that are having trouble finding their identity. It's not fun. It's very confusing, and it comes with a lot of judgment from culture that is going to be much more stable than you. This is why generally speaking, the left wing versus the right wing. The left wing is more creative in nature, more open in nature, obviously. The more free thinking, or not exactly free thinking today. I wouldn't say that actually. I would say they're more open freely to new ideas, right? The conservatives are much more closed and more stable and more traditional in nature, obviously. You can just you just know that implicitly today in culture, just from what you know and understand about our current state of the world right now, right? So you have this sexual confusion all of a sudden where people don't know where they stand, and the whole world is looking at this movement going, what the hell do we do about all of this? It just seems to be getting worse, and people seem to be getting even more confused as the confusion is celebrated, right? And pride is taken into it, right? And what is pride? Where did pride come from? The rejection of God, right? Because belief in God requires deep and fundamental humility, because you believe there is a power way higher than you. Someone with ultimate power and ultimate judgment that can smite you and send you to hell and heaven for eternity, to burn alive forever in despair and darkness, a soulless place, lonely forever, or a place of light and total connection and happiness and goodness, right? If you believe that, if you believe in God, which almost everyone in the nation did for a long time, the beginning of the United States, what happens? You end up taking pride in yourself, too much pride in yourself. And it fuels this self-centeredness and this narcissism in all things that we do, not just the gay pride movement, of course. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the movement per se, but side effects, and there's sects and parts of this movement that are evil and self-seeking in nature entirely. You know that just by watching a few videos online. Like, here's a crazy example. I want to go a little crazy today. If you're homosexual and you are a kindergarten teacher, this isn't saying that everyone would do this. But if you've been relatively alone your whole life, there's very few homosexuals out there in the world. Wouldn't you want to live in a world where everyone is homosexual and believes the same things that you do? Wouldn't you want that? Not saying everyone would, but there is a section that would. So why would you not want to indoctrinate the children and plaster pride flags all over your classroom and make them and influence them to be on that side of the spectrum at any cost that you can, any rate? You will work for it every day, right? To impose your beliefs on somebody else. Now, side thought, but this leads us into our next point. We've replaced God, replaced this belief with worship of celebrities and utopian ideas for humanity and the state. 3 different parts. So this LGBTQ movement wants to move culture to become more like them. Of course, this is the first time they've had a voice and had power. And when you have power, naturally, you want to gain more power. Power feels good. Power is what drives many human beings. Now, not many human beings, I shouldn't say that, but once you have a taste for power, power corrupts a human being. You want to drive for more power. This is what's been the beauty of the United States and the freedom that we have. Everyone has individual power to a degree. They're able to vote. They have a voice. They have free speech. But in previous times, we had a monarchy. We had a church, a Catholic church, that lurched in for power more and more at any chance that they could to strengthen their own dominion over the world, to encroach and grow their power over the globe. So that it will always be in there, regardless of what someone believes. That comes with true power. But we're in a nation where the president is controlled. You have the executive branches. You have a balance. You have checks and balances, right? So it's been a beautiful thing. But we're losing this because we're replacing God, that originally in the United States we would have believed is above the three branches, is above all men. Your men in power must be God-fearing, and they must show that they're a man of godly character. You can read Proverbs for 2 minutes and understand what godly character looks like. And Proverbs, if you don't know, is a fantastic book in the Bible that anyone can pick up and really learn so much from about what a great human is, what a good human is. Now, just to learn for knowledge's sake alone. Now, since we've thrown out God and the belief in God, who becomes the king of what we believe in? We believe in movements. We want to convert other people to our movement. We want to gain power for our own belief instead of having God on your side and wanting to move Christianity to save other people and to get them to adopt your same beliefs in a way that would help them and help their life now and into the future and eternal life. We've thrown that out for believing more short-sighted ideals that are self-seeking in nature, pleasure-seeking in nature, power-seeking in nature, all for who? Not God, not for an overarching purpose, but for man and for collective humanity. I forgot the philosophers that predicted this, but they predicted after God died that hundreds of millions of people would be killed and murdered once utopian human ideas would emerge, right? Mass genocides, Maoist China, Soviet Union, Stalin, Mussolini, Hitler. These men were not driven by God. They were driven for man, for a utopian idea that they wanted to force on all of the human race. For, in what they would say, for the propagation of a better human race, for a better future. So all the current existing human lives that did not believe or were seen to come in the way of this grand goal that they and their parties would have created, they would be controlled, enslaved, and exterminated. Because who cares? The world goes on for millions of years, thousands of years. They're just little dust motes. They're just ants. Just murder them all. It does not matter, because when you don't believe in a God, mass murder is nothing to you because there's no consequence. All there is reward. You can justify the means by watching or focusing on the end, the utopian future that you tell the nation is possible. We're going to build Germany and our powers, our countries that unite with us, into the most prosperous nations that man has ever seen. We can build a perfect world. But the Christians know that man is fundamentally flawed. He has fallen short of the glory of God. And no matter what we build, men will always be corrupt. Men will always seek power and tyranny. Men will always seek control. So we fought for our own ideals, the free market, democracy. Then we helped the world fight against these ideas. We created the nuclear bomb, which we'll get to, to shake the world by necessary fear in order to create lasting peace to this day. That's the reason why we don't have mass conflict and mass genocide still occurring. We created a nuclear bomb and had a nuclear arms race, and it's given us rare, unbelievably rare peace in the first world nations from a global, all of human history perspective, right? Now, so these utopian ideas have taken over. What else has taken over? Celebrities. We believe in men more than we believe in something good and noble, but man is flawed. So we're worshiping celebrities in a sense. We're even worshiping politicians. You know how many die-hard, blind as a bat Donald Trump supporters there are? You know how many dumb, blind as a bat Democratic liberal supporters that just support any movement that comes out of that side of the house? We lose ourselves in things because we have this spiritual need in ourselves to worship something, to believe in something wholeheartedly. And now that God has died in culture, God is gone from culture for the most part, generally speaking, right? We're worshiping and believing in other things blindly and carelessly. And it causes us, the far right and the far left, to push in more radical directions than ever. There's no God to retain and bond both sides of the house, where we both have something fundamental to believe in, a higher purpose, a higher power, with higher values written down and coded into the Bible, so we can all fight more together on the same side. So this is the current place that we're in. We have people worshiping their political parties and fighting for their political parties as if it's a spiritual war, which it is. But it's the wrong spiritual war. The spiritual war is higher than this. There's something higher, deeper than this. It's good versus evil. It's God versus godlessness. Now, that's for up to you to explore at some point in your life. Of course, I'm not here to preach to anyone or to tell you how to think or what to think. These are just ideas that you can take with or reject after careful criticism of what I say, of course. So if you're listening to this, most likely you're an intelligent person, and you can make decisions consciously on your own. That's what the mind is for. It's the coolest thing. That's what a mind is to consciously think, not implicitly just driven by our emotional impulses, but to be used to think, to weigh out our thoughts, to weigh things, and make conscious choices by looking at and being curious about all options, so you can consciously choose what to believe. I'm just giving you insight and information from my own life experience. You get to take it and run with it, and you can dissect what I say and separate the wheat from the chaff and become wiser, right? That's what the human experience is for. Becoming better, growing, and becoming wiser. Now, number 2, we have had unbelievable technological revolutions in this last 100 years that have got us here to this point. Now, we've already covered a little bit on the nuclear bomb, what that means, the arms race that we had, and how it's created peace for us. So I'm not really going to touch on that very much. But let's go into the first part, would be what I think it is transportation has influenced immigration, international immigration, and the way that we work. It has separated the family from itself. You're no longer working with your father and learning his trade. If your dad's a blacksmith, you would be a blacksmith, and your kids would be a blacksmith. You would become an expert in your trade. Very little social mobility. If you're farmers, you would be farmers. There was no internet to research on, and we'll get to that too. There was no car to drive away across the nation. It would be a very, very bold move to grab a horse and ride across America and start a new life. Learn from somebody else. Most people would not do that. In human history, at least, America was one of the first places that would have been commonplace, to chart a course for this side of to head off to California, to grab a plot of land and to start a life for yourself and your family that you might have brought along with you, or maybe you went alone. Now, you would have had a family and a support system together. You would have been in the same house each night. You would have ate each meal together each day. And you would have been, the girls would have been with the mother, learning how a mother is useful and how it is a necessary purpose and driver in the world. And the men would more or less be out in the field, working the land, hunting the land, and learning how to be a man. The woman would learn how to be a woman. The men would learn how to be a men. And of course, there'd be cross and overlap between the two. I'm not saying all little girls weren't also out in the fields. This is just general perspective on what I know about human history and our own country's history. Right now, transportation took away the father from the household. He's all of a sudden in the workforce. He's driving to the city. He's working in a factory. Women would have ended up working in factories as well, not to the same degree as men. But as manufacturing and the Industrial Revolution took off, we have more families moving into the cities and away from the farmlands, away from out there, living off the land, always halfway starving throughout the winters and dying so frequently. You know, you might not know this, but just under half of all children under the age of 5 would have died before their 5th birthday. If you had 12 children, which you most likely would have had as a mother, and father, you would have lost half of those children. 6 of them would have died before the age of 5 from various diseases in childbirth. Who knows what awful diseases were around during these times, and our lack of proper anesthetic, medical sanitation when you would have been giving birth to a baby, of course. We did not know any of these things, so half of your children died. A horrible, horrible thing for mankind to have to go through, but it was a part of life. Now, you have families beginning to move into the cities, and this Industrial Revolution cranks off, 1800s, right? And you have this new melting pot of cultures. Your family would have been much more exposed to other families and other people. You're working in factories among many, many people. Your children are playing out in the yard, heading off to who knows when school started, but boarding schools and this and that. And the families and children were separated more so. So now the government culture is now raising the children much more so than it would have been in the past. The man is no longer with the children and with the family as much as he would have been, right? And now you keep this going out to the future. We introduce the car, intercity transportation, and then now we have suburban communities where men are driving an hour, up to an hour and a half to work, and are staying there, sometimes 50, 60 hours a week, and are, now due to current existing, we're sitting at desks. We don't have the same physical energy and stamina that we once had, and we have all these other distractions that we're going to get into. But now we're separate from the family, right? The family is no longer a strong unit. It's like the kids are the kids and the parents are the parents. Parents are coming home and distracting themselves on TV. They're tired after their long work day of sitting down, right? They're exhausted. They're stressed. And the children get to go into their own little worlds. So as time's gone on, and this leads us into the next step, we have the phone, we have the internet, we have TVs, and we have software. This further breaks that has the family's already broken down in nature for the most part, right? We're separate. We're living in our own separate little worlds and our separate little bubbles. We have bedrooms for the first time in human history. 200 years ago, you didn't have any bedrooms. Your house was one big room. Then you had an outhouse with a hole in the ground 20 feet away from the home, 50 feet away from the home. You had to walk through in the snow or the heat or whatever it was. You didn't have air conditioning, right? All these things are brand new. You didn't have a couch. A couch is new, right? So we've had a much more lackadaisical, relaxed, and distracted lifestyle. But since we've been separated further and further from our own family system and that structure, that stability, that love, that connection, that camaraderie, that you would have just, I mean, you have nothing else to do. So you're going to talk to your family members. You don't have a phone to distract yourself. You don't have a car to drive and go somewhere else. You know, you didn't even have a bicycle until like recent time in human history, right? You would be there communicating and talking and learning and telling each other stories and learning from the elders down to elder to elder to elder to parent to parent to parent, right? Great grandparents all the way down to the children. That's how lessons and stories and tradition would have been retained and passed down. Your mother could have taught you to write if she had the privilege and gift of being able to read and write at all, right? Or maybe the father, who knows? Now we have the phone, internet, TVs, and software, and this has allowed us not only the breakdown of the family bond and the family unit that we learned the most from, that we became a man or became a woman from, but it's also broken down the individual because now you're distracted from yourself. You're not processing your own emotions and learning how to deal with reality on your own because you can plug into a device, plug into anything, any distraction, and take yourself out of yourself and escape into something that's programming you. So now society has almost total control over the children. Not total, but more control than it's ever had in all of human history. We're being programmed. Your children are taken away from you and placed into public school systems where their peers are raising them, and society, culture, and men in power behind the companies that create the videos, the video games, the TV, the movies. That's what they're being raised by on their phones. And then they share in that collective culture together. They just positive feedback, validation off of each other. And they're more, parents are separate from children now. They don't even know how to communicate anymore. When for all of human history, you went to your father, you went to your mother, generally speaking. That was your source of wisdom and knowledge and dedication. And that's how you learned. That's who you respected and believed in and had faith in. And God above them, God above the father, God above the mother, right? So now you've not only broken down the family, you've broken down the individual. So whatever power play flavor of the month, societal cause, quote unquote, comes along, whatever's flashy in the news in any given time, that's been propagated by the men in true power behind the scenes that fund all of the companies and news outlets, the real powers that be behind the dark, shadowy curtain of the world, they get to program not only the parent's mind now, but also the children's mind. You're sitting there on Fox News, vegged out, like a vegetable, being programmed by whatever they're telling you for years on end. Same with CNN. It's all a system that's been built to gain views. And what is a view? A view is your attention, your focus. And what you focus on is what you end up believing. What you give attention to is what you give energy to. They dictate your emotional health, your identity, your mind, your thoughts, your beliefs. Terrifying in a sense, I know, but it is reality now. And it's up to us to understand this and be conscious about this so we can make better choices and decisions. Now, the software part of this has made us, plus the internet, TV, phone, all of that, phone, internet, and software has made us extraordinarily productive. Our GDP is out the wazoo. We have created cheap products. We all have cell phones. We all have the cheapest food we've ever had in fucking history. You can get McDonald's, a burger for $1.50. That's crazy. For thousands of years, meat would have been a delicacy. In 1820, you're a little British kid getting an orange in your stocking, a fruit for Christmas. You'd be eating it in tears all together, holding arms with your fucking brothers and sisters like, holy man, this is amazing. Now it's nothing. Everything's pennies. You can work a minimum wage and you can find some roommates and you are good in this world. You might not be happy because you're going to be jealous and envious of other people that have more than you, generally speaking. But in terms of a historical perspective, you're one of the luckiest people that's ever been alive. Every ancestor is just in tears, just so happy for humanity right now. And just in terms of our productivity and how rich we've become, generally speaking, in terms of how much we can actually have. You can go buy clothes for nothing at Goodwill. Pff, good luck. In the 1800s, you had to make all of your own clothes. You had to buy the thread, buy the needles, and learn from your mother how to sew clothing, how to repair clothing. And how much of it would you actually own? How much fabric would you be able to afford, right? Now you can go in Goodwill and just end up walking out with a suit and nice shoes for like $10, $15 a suit. Dude, that's crazy, right? Now, the nuclear bomb, just to touch on this has allowed us peace underneath the massive threat. Because now if war takes place, we have to understand that there is catastrophic, monumental consequences for war now. This is a very dangerous game that we're playing. It's a very dangerous game that Russia and Ukraine are playing right now, and the United States is freely playing with. We are playing with fire and a man that we don't even know if he believes in a higher power. But we do know that he's one of the best leaders that Russia's had in the last 100 years, definitely one of the most safest leaders in all of Russian history, Soviet history. So we should at least be grateful that this hasn't got much, much, much worse and worse sooner from a historical perspective, right? Now, another technological revolution is we've created hormones for women and for men. We're able to play with the human biology in a way that we've never been able to play with before. What has happened here with birth control, with understanding that if you come in a woman on a certain day of the month, she gets a baby. You can pull out now. You didn't know in human history that if you pulled out, you wouldn't have a kid. You just had kids. You didn't know why, right? Or you didn't know exactly biologically why it occurred. Now we do. So what has happened here? So women have been able to join the workforce en masse more than ever in the last 120 years. And this has done a lot of things. One thing that I think people don't talk about enough, but I mean, it's just an interesting point, is women joining the workforce has caused the labor supply to go up, which has kept wages down in a sense, right? This isn't the number one reason or primary reason, but it's a reason that wages have stayed down, right? As more and more women have joined the workforce over and over and over, more and more and more. Now both parents are working now and have to work. Both parents have been influenced to work and to both become like men. The modern feminine movement has driven more and more women to become and live like men. And a lot of people are unhappy right now. Men don't know their place in the world, and women don't know their place in the world. This is a very confusing time. Now, if you want to learn more about men versus women and my ideas and thoughts on that to help you brainstorm how to think and act in this new crazy world, I just did another talk on the war of men versus women. So you can listen to that on the podcast or YouTube channel. Now, this has allowed women to have a choice of not having children. They now understand how children are made. Now they can take birth control and not have children, join the workforce and get out here and, of course, be effective and useful and necessary contributors to society, and have got us to a much more prosperous part of human history. We are so productive. We are so rich, generally speaking, from the bottom all the way to the top. Of course, the top have got richer and richer. That's how any game works. Being in an economy is like Monopoly. It's a trading game. It's money for value, money for value. And just like if you played the game of Monopoly, someone at the end of Monopoly ends up winning all of the money. Someone at the end of the poker game ends up winning all of the money. That's just a rule of the universe. People are better at playing the game. Some people are born in a generation of men and women, a family that has been great at playing the game for 1,000 years. They really know the game. How do you think Donald Trump is where he's at? He got to learn what he knows from his father and his father's father and his father's father's father. It's generational, right? But that doesn't mean that a large number of rich families lose all of their wealth in the second and third generation. This has been studied just in the last 100 years. Most wealthy and successful people, their kids end up complete degenerates, because if you inherit all of that money, you never learned how to make and create money. You never learned how to retain money and use money wisely. You didn't have to build the character and the work ethic required to make that money, so you're going to naturally spend it, right? But that's just a separate point on the current state of the world, which is inequality. I'm not even going to cover that, but we understand that things are unequal in our current culture. Of course, that's how it is. And we need to figure out how to stop it from going so far out of hand. But a part of that is the reasons that I'm talking about today. It comes down to what the individual thinks and believes in. Rich people live by and believe in very different things than poor people. They have very different habits of thought, how they think, what they focus on, what they do with their time. I know this because I've been able to meet hundreds and hundreds of homeowners inside their houses. I own a contracting business, and we are in-home consultants, and I've been in countless trailers and trailer parks, sitting there and talking with people for hours on their couches, just talking about their life and how they got to where they are and what they think about the world and all these things. I'm a pretty deep person, and I like to open people up and figure out what they think and how they operate. And the same thing for many, many, many mansions that have been inside, many successful people. There are things and ways of thought and behaviors that determine where you end up in reality. But what's great about that is you can learn. You can change, you can improve. You can also always get worse, but your direction, your pattern is up to you. You get to decide where you end up over a long enough period of time, generally speaking. Now, separate topic. I have plenty of other podcast videos on how to get rich, how to be healthy and fit and mentally healthy, how to focus, all types of things in my channel. Now, so what's happened after women have joined the workforce in the way that they have, which has been very, very beneficial for our economy, for our prosperity, for our safety as a nation, our stability, our resources that we've generated, is men and women don't exactly know what to do with each other now. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know if we believe in a family or believe in children. We don't know if we should have them. We don't know if we want them. Many people don't want them. Many people don't want a relationship. Why? These are questions to be asked. 60% of young men are single right now between 18 to 29, but 30% of young women are single. Women are dating up. And I get to that in a separate video on masculinity and how essentially what men need to do. I think I cover it in the War versus Men versus Women video, right? Podcast, whatever. 50% of women will be childless at 30 going forward for an indefinite amount of time. We do not know. It might get worse and worse and worse. It seems to be trending in a way that's getting worse and worse and worse. We also don't even know if we should bring children into this crazy world. We hardly know how to understand and operate in this world as it is. We're all addicted to screens like little slaves. We're just sitting there just behind the phone, scrolling for miles, playing Candy Crush, playing this game, that game, doing these things behind these soft glows of the screens. We don't even know how to control ourselves. How on earth will we be able to guide our own children if we brought them into the world? Now, that's interesting. We don't have families anymore. We don't have individuals anymore. Where does this leave us? Next is machine learning, algorithms, and AI. These are new. They've never been experimented with on humanity in all of history. We do not know the fire that we are playing with right now. This has caused mass influence for individuals and businesses rising to global power, control and influence like never before. We're in a war of attention and ideas. May the best ideas win, yes, but ideas get out there and are fueled through money. Greed is an intention of business. It is the reason that most corporations operate by. At least you can trust in it, though. At least corporations are relatively honest. What's not honest today and what we can't trust today is the politicians and the news that we're listening to that is controlled by the bureaucracy and by the dark powers that be hidden behind the scenes that we'll never get to meet or see. We do not know who controls these politicians. They are controlled like levers in a way that's more powerful than ever before because they have global voices. Bernie Sanders is listened to by the world. That wouldn't have been how it was in history, right? I'm not saying Bernie Sanders is a bad guy. He's just someone that came to mind. You know, it's very interesting that such an elderly man is able to have this much global influence, right? Donald Trump, Joe Biden, people are listening and watching these leaders, watching everything that they say, everything that they tweet, every podcast or interview that they may get on or not get on. We see them in our feeds all the time. Information overload of what other people think. And we are being programmed by this system. The system of the systems that we own, essentially. The TV, the screens, the computers, the feeds, the phones, the podcasts, the radio. We're listening to all of this all the time. More so than we ever would have in human history. In 1922, you didn't sit out there and just listen to your radio for 8 hours a day. But we're fucking on computers and TVs and screens for 8 hours a day. I think on average among the nation. We're not thinking for ourselves. You're in kind of a vegetated, sedated state, allowing your mind just to soak in ideas and just gravitate towards ideas impulsively, you know, regulated by your emotional impulses. Oh, that feels good. Let me click on that. Oh, now the feed's going to show me more of that. Oh, now I'm thinking this way. Now I'm thinking this way, you know? So very strange. Most people don't understand why they think what they think or how they've come to the conclusions that they have. They're just chanting what other ideas have been propagated on the interweb. They don't know when they grab them. They might have grabbed them at 12 years old, sitting there on Reddit, scrolling through liberal feeds. They have no idea where their ideas actually came from. They're good at justifying and rationalizing and getting their ideas validated from other people. But thinking in today's world is very, very rare and nearly impossible to do if you're sitting there in feeds all the time. You never have time to actually critically think and sort through your own psyche and mind and understand what you think and believe and why you do and where those ideas will lead you. They just feel good to you, so you decide to believe in them impulsively, implicitly, and they dictate your life forever. Scary, right? Crazy. But that's how human beings are, with this much power in our hand. But it's not our power. We are not in power with the phone like we think we are. The phone is in control of us. The men and women behind the screen publishing everything, those are the ones that are in power. The producers have the power. The consumers are not in power today. Now, with all this mass influence, you can sway and move and dictate the population to move it where you want it to move. And we'll get into the real implications of that and what the future is going to look like soon. We're just talking about how we're here, where we're at now, how we've got here. So, right, and the next stage of this, AI I did not touch on, is the AI will be moved by the most powerful and wealthy people of this world, conglomerates of people, really. It will be used to move the population in different directions so they can get more of what they want. Money, power, greed, control. Obviously, that's what you want. When you're in power, you're an expert at gaining power. Why are you an expert at gaining power? Because you love power and you want more power. And we're talking about the highest echelons of this world. Most of the United States, most of the global world, in capitalist societies, they operate relatively safely and peacefully and cooperatively because we operate in terms of competence. We're not operating in terms of our power. Things aren't tyrannical yet, at least. We get to choose whatever contractor we want to come over to our house. You don't have a gang in the neighborhood forcing you to choose a certain contractor, or else you're going to buy olive oil from us or the Italian mobsters. And if you don't, we'll fucking kill you and your kids. That's not happening anymore, right? At least on any grand level. Most of the United States and capitalism is people get to where they are through competence. You are better than somebody else. That's why you've earned the position that you are in. And some people, can skip up totem poles and get there, but many people don't last. They fall down, they lose their riches, they lose their status because they never really truly earned it and didn't continually earn it and retain that position over time. You might be at Starbucks and you have a manager that's just a fucking idiot, but maybe he's worked there a lot more than you, and in turn, the management trusts him more because you've only been there 2 freaking months. Why do you deserve to be a manager? You haven't dedicated enough time to the company and the corporation to maybe have earned the right for that role. Maybe you're better than him at many things, but maybe he's better than you at certain things, like loyalty for one, and like that longevity. Maybe that's why he's there in that position. They trust him more, right? So there's all these different angles to look at people in leadership. It's not all power driven, but the top of this world, the hidden powers, the people that print the money, control the levers of the world, of countries. That is power. There's a phrase, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that leads us into our next phase here. Where do we go from here? Where do we go as a world, as humanity? Where do we end up? So right now we're in this nihilistic, kind of meaningless state where we're all self-seeking for the most part and pleasure-seeking and just doing whatever we can to feel good and live, short-term, happy-focused lifestyles and to avoid pain as much as we can. And it's created a much more weaker population as a whole. It's broke down the family and the individual, right? A lot of factors here that we've covered, but we're in this spot where we don't know where to go, but we're on YouTube and podcasts looking for fucking answers. So what's going to happen? Where do we go from here? The meaningless behavior that we've been mentioning, the degeneration of morality continues. It will continue because human nature is human nature. Nature is nature. And nature always takes the path of least resistance. The river never flows upstream. It flows downstream. It follows gravity. It cuts through the rocks over time. It does whatever is easiest and just keeps going down that smooth road. So we will continue to degenerate because there's absolutely no sign of turning around. There's no reason for anyone to turn around right now. Maybe you as an individual, but I mean humanity itself, the general population. You're here because you want to get better and you want to improve, and that's an incredible thing, and I'm really fucking glad that you're here. But for the rest of the world, for our children's children, things aren't looking too hot. We have sedation. We are sedating ourselves at every chance we get. Drugs, alcohol, TV, porn, meaningless sex on bullshit apps where you get to shop for human beings. This is where we're at. Cruises 2-3 times a year to drink and eat yourself to death and avoid real conversations with your wife or husband. Right? Fun, fun, fun. You only live once. Fuck it, man. Live it up. I'm not hurting anybody. This is where we're at in the current state of the world. And it leads to nihilism. So with the sedation and the nihilism, the meaninglessness, the apathy, we're going to have short stints of selfish and total chaos, like we just saw with the Black Lives Matter movement. A lot of that movement wasn't fueled for noble reasons. Anyone with eyes could see that. A lot of the movement and a lot of the people that joined into the movement are there for resentment, their nihilism, their own validating their own apathy and their own bad behaviors, right? So we're going to have these short stints of selfish chaos blip up, and it's going to scare the population. We might even have another epidemic. Who knows? One might be crafted. We do not know. We know that Pfizer was doing gain-of-function research here in the United States. Any accident in that lab, and we could have had a super virus, another version of coronavirus, be released. That was all released by Project Veritas just like the end of last year, right? So we're experimenting with dangerous things, right? That's what we believe happened in Wuhan, China. We are experimenting with dangerous things. We have dangerous powers at hand. Tinder is dangerous. It's playing with the sexuality of the entire world. Artificial intelligence is dangerous. It could destroy us completely, right? So we're flirting with all of these different things. And we're flirting with different things, like artificial intelligence, for one, in order to figure out how to gain more control and power over the population. And as each of these short stints of resentment and jealousy and envy-driven chaotic bouts of whatever happens in culture, all the riots that are going to happen in the streets. If you go to Lenox Mall right now, there is an armed guard outside of like every fifth shop. There's 14, 15 police officers with like attack canine dogs, not attack, but you know what I mean, inside Lenox Mall in Atlanta right now. 5 years ago, they were not in there at all. I'm born and raised in Atlanta. I know. I've been there. I was just there a month ago at the Lenox Mall. I got to see this with my own eyes. I was pulled over by a man that claimed he was homeless. He blocked me in and demanded money. He extorted me for money in an open parking lot in front of the vitamin shop in broad daylight. He would not let me leave. So I gave him $20 just so I could get the fuck out of there. And I didn't want him to shoot my vehicle or damage the vehicle by throwing something heavy at it, right? Things are getting more wild out there because they're allowed to. We've become so weak as a nation without a standard that God and religion would have had for us, that we're continuing to degenerate and freely accept any idea into culture, but we aren't far-sighted enough to see where ideas take us because we've never experimented with these ideas in all of human history. We don't know where the sexual revolution has already taken us and where it's going to continually take us. No one understands the dark underworld of these movements. We just see it with compassion and acceptance on the surface because you see a lot of people in pain and no one wants other people in humanity to be in pain. So we're so allowing today, right? But each movement can be positioned as a power play by the dark men behind the curtain in true power, because they are going to lean into total control slowly but surely as the older and wiser and more free-seeking, free-thinking populations die off. Sooner or later, the children of this world will not know what it was like to be free. And it's a horrible thing, but there's nothing that's going to keep us from going into that direction. One day, slowly but surely, we can stave off the rate at which this occurs, but there's no taking America to what it once was, the golden years, the land of the free and the home of the brave. A funny comedian on Netflix the other day said, America, the land of the free and the home of never leaving your house. It's so true. People aren't hanging out and talking, communicating with their neighbors anymore and sharing ideas and learning how to be stronger and practice conversation and communication. We're going further and further inside and further inside a virtual world where true men in power get to control the ideas of the world. Now, this doesn't mean there's not hope for many of us. There is serious hope for you. If you're listening to this, you will be able to be free and stay free one day because you will be able to watch, to be aware, to be conscious. The driven self-improvers and those that are aware and want and crave their own control and their own personal freedom, those are the people that will be able to stay free. Generally speaking, they will be able to move to the states, move to the countries before it's too late, before we get to a point where the men in real power have the ability to control transportation, to control your income. As AI moves in, we are going to lose millions, tens of millions of careers and jobs and purpose in people's day-to-day life. What happens when you lose purpose in your job? You're going to accept money from the state. UBI, universal basic income, welfare, handouts, whatever it might be. But you don't know that they print the money. They want to do this. They want to give you money. They really do. Because when they give you money, they gain they gain power over you. They gain your vote. They gain more control over what you think. They can lie. They can say whatever they want to gain the vote. And if you're sedated enough with the money coming in each month that allows you to live out your self-seeking, pleasure-seeking lifestyle, maybe raise a little family and just all live out your lives on your iPhone, scrolling away, doing little fun things around the town, well, one day in the future, as they hand out more and more, way deep in the future, by the way, we're talking in the next 10, 20 years, universal basic income will rise because people will not know what to do. They will not be able to learn how to grapple with or utilize this pseudo AI that's kind of going to be somewhat human input focused and oriented, right? The blue collar will be safe for a long time. That's what's excellent. I think the blue collar workforce, they're some of the happiest and most stable people in the United States. They get to work with their hands. They have real pride and a physical world that they're living in that keeps them more human in nature, more manly in nature, the men in blue collar, that is, right? Roofing in July, do that for a month, you will become a man very quickly. You just will, right? But humans only do what they have to do. And we're not going to have to work in the future. We will be given money, printed money by those in power. And as we stay in our homes and we become more and more obedient to the state, obedient to the powers that be, our electric cars will be able to be controlled, turned off under the guise of it's for the globe. It's for humanity. It's for saving the earth. But what you don't understand is that men in power, and I've felt certain degrees of power, you want more and more power. You want total submission and obedience and control over everyone else. And you want to keep everyone underneath you. Because if everyone rises, you're no longer rich and powerful. You want the separation. You want to be exclusive. You want to lock off your neighborhood from everyone else. You want the $130 million home. You want everyone else in trailer parks. Why would you not? You want to feel powerful and significant and valuable and like a god. Because without God ruling ourselves now and ruling the men of the United States now, ruling the powers that be, man becomes God. And man will act as if they're God. Their hand will be able to control, manipulate, and destroy and annihilate any part of the population that they want to, just like Adolf Hitler did. Exterminate this type of human because they're in our way of a safe and prosperous nation. This is what will happen. Real modern slavery is going to leach in, and the genocide will begin one day in the future. Now, this is just reality. This is just how it will be. There's no way around this because I don't know what you think, but the nation is not going back to God. There's no reason to go back to God because we've built such a pleasurable world without much pain and real pain. We just stay in these sedated, semi-depressed bubbles, pleasure-seeking all of the time. There's no reason to go towards God. The only reason you would go towards God, besides being raised in a family that had God there, is massive pain. Otherwise, why cry to a Savior? Why humble yourself before a Lord, before Allah, before God and Jesus Christ? Why? It won't happen until the end times. The end times for the United States, at least, and much of the first world, is here. So, this is reality. But if you've listened this far, you're a smart person. And you know that as long as you stay aware and fighting the good fight and staying conscious and alive and free thinking and building yourself, your own safety, buying assets in other countries, slowly but surely, right? Plots of land, whatever you need. This is how you'll be able to retain your own personal safety and personal freedom out into the future. But one day, why would transportation be here? Why would men in power want anyone to transport? They don't need the economy to run. Does North Korea need their economy to run well? Do they need their people prospering? No. Does the worst dictators in African and Middle East nations need their countries to be prosperous? No. You just hoard enough resources and wealth for yourself. You print your own money and you make the rest of the population weaker. And that's what's happening today. The population is becoming weaker and weaker and weaker. Masculinity is dying off intentionally because masculinity is that which makes men strong. It's what means you're a man, that masculine energy. I'm not saying I'm not saying all men are masculine in energy. Many men are feminine in energy, but masculinity exists in all of us and needs to be matured and developed. But now it's being weakened and attacked and vilified. Why? Because the 18, 19, and 21-year-olds, those are the revolutionaries. Those are the boys that can be used by leaders to take over a nation when things get wrong, when things go haywire. This is just how things are. But for you and me, we'll be free. We're going to have an amazing time. We'll be able to do what we want because we are free thinkers. We get to control what we watch and what we see. We know how to tailor our feeds effectively. We know how to block the phones from ourselves, put them on airplane mode and get to work and get things done. And we will be the ones that can help save other people and bring other people to a place where they have their own personal freedom. Because personal freedom comes from personal responsibility, work, determination, diligence. Freedom is what this nation was and what it stood for, but that freedom is crumbling and it will continue to crumble exponentially as AI comes into the picture. Now, if you'd enjoyed these ideas in discussion, well, I don't know if you enjoyed them, but if you learned some things and it got your brain tweaking and moving in some cool directions and some fun directions to help understand the world and what's going on so we can better prepare for reality now and the future, please like, subscribe, and please leave a review on this podcast if you're there. Like the video, leave a comment. I want to hear your thoughts on this. What I'm missing here, what I got right here, where you paid attention the most, X, Y, Z. I understand this is a long talk. This is a lot of information covered, a lot of my ideas that I have on the current state of the world. You know, all I did today is I wrote some bullet points in the gym of what I wanted to think about and talk about today to share, because I don't like keeping this kind of stuff to myself, even though it's definitely on the fringes of the internet. This is not something you'll come across in your mainstream by any means. So if you're here, you're most likely not mainstream, which is great. So join into the conversation. And also click on the link in the podcast or YouTube and send in your email and or your phone number. I have a weekly motivational email that's going to start going out soon, and also a weekly motivational text, something inspiring that can help push you a little bit. I'm going to personally write everything. They'll be very short, very sweet. No bullshit, no spam, no paragraph nonsense, like clear, simple, 1-minute stuff. The text will be like a sentence. I want to keep you in the loop and get you going in the tribe with me so we can help save some of the last freedom fighters in the world. That sounds cheesy, but hate to say it, but it is reality. Enjoy the rest of your week. Keep your eyes on an optimistic future for yourself in this world. The United States might fall, but we have so many other nations right now that are searching for their own prosperity. Many parts of the world are getting better and better and better and are on the up and up. You know, our downfall is coming, but that's okay because the world is large and life is good no matter what. So have a great week, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.